everybody, Jay the Fish Guy here, back again for another episode of On the Road with the Fish Guy. Thanks for joining us. So today's episode is inspired by recent events in my area where we had a large storm roll through and just hundreds of thousands of people without power, some for short term, but others they're saying maybe not for as much as a week. So that led me to want to make this video. What do you do in the event of a power outage with your aquarium? So this will be applicable to freshwater, saltwater, whatever you have for an aquarium. Obviously, it needs power to keep everybody alive, right? Okay, so what are the two big considerations that you have to keep in mind to keep your fish alive? Temperature and aeration. Without those, they're not going to last very long. You know, for me up in here in New England, we get pretty cool even pretty early in the year. So, you know, this for us in October here, we've actually been pretty warm, but, you know, it still gets down to the 30s. If your house doesn't have power, you might be dipping down into the 50s, which is obviously way too cold for your fish. So you're going to need some way to keep the tank warm, or at least to hold on to what temperature it has. Now, all this is really going to depend on if you're having a short power outage, or like some of these folks, they're going to be out for maybe as much as a week. So what do you need to do? Well, wrapping the tank in a blanket and even putting a blanket over part of the top, the tank still needs to breathe to some degree, to help keep the temperature up in the tank is going to be very helpful. Beyond that, you're going to have to find some way to actually heat the water. Now, that's kind of a little bit of a gray area. Now, I will go into a little bit on various ways that you could power some equipment here in a minute, but if you have no ability to power a heater whatsoever, you're going to have to maybe warm up some water, whether you do it on a wood stove or, I mean, obviously your microwave's not going to work if you have a propane stove. There you go. Sorry, a propane stove in your kitchen. You could warm up some water that way because that's still going to work if you have a power outage. You don't want it boiling, and you know that it's a little bit of a dangerous way to do it because you don't have any real control. But if you are just out of options and you need some way to try to keep some of your fish alive and it's getting cooler, you know, small amounts of water, and again, not overdoing it, don't boil the water, you know, that would be one option that you can do. Okay, so aeration. Now, aeration is very critical, and especially if you have a high density of fish in the tank. So what are your options? Well, battery operated air pumps are probably the least expensive and easiest way to get aeration to your fish. You know, it's just as simple to have it literally in your cabinet, have a few sets of batteries on hand. You know, most of them take C's or D's, pretty heavy duty batteries. And just literally have enough air tubing and an air stone that you can reach the bottom of the tank, because you also want to get some circulation going there as well. So if it's right at the tippy top, the air is not really doing much. If you can get it farther down in the tank, you can really move a lot of the water and really aerate a lot of the water. Also, another option with doing battery operated air pumps. I can't even talk today. It's been a long weekend, so bear with me. I'm not going to edit any of this out. We're just going to keep going. Sponge filters. If you guys aren't familiar, you know, a lot of people that do breeding or have a very large amount of tanks, they use sponge filters for the economy aspect of it, but it's also a great way to provide some filtration if you can't power your power filter. So if you have your battery operated air pump running and you have the output connected to the sponge filter, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're aerating and you're actually filtering at the same time. So that's a great option. If you start to need to run some other equipment, let's say you have a saltwater tank, you want to get some circulation going in there with some pumps, get yourself, and this is a little more expensive, but if you have a reef tank, odds are you'd be willing to invest in some extra equipment to make sure that you don't lose this stuff. So a large capacity deep cycle marine battery, literally like a car battery, but even bigger. These deep cycle marine batteries that are designed to run for long periods of time with kind of a low draw. So what you could do, you get yourself one of these batteries, get yourself a power inverter that have the little alligator clips, and you clip onto the battery, and then you can power stuff through the inverter. So you'd be able to put a small power strip. You could run potentially your heater, depending on how big a heater it is. You could also run a couple of power heads even, or a power head to circulate the water in the tank, because with saltwater tanks, whether it be a reef tank, fish-only tank, odds are you have live rock. You know, if you have one pointed at the surface, at the very least, you're creating oxygen exchange at the surface, you're moving water around the live rocks and making sure you're still getting some filtration out of that. Should go without saying, I will mention this real quick, don't feed your fish. You know, a lot of fish can go up to and including a week if they're healthy and in good condition, not being fed for that entire week. And what that'll do is you cut off the waste, you cut off any excess food. There's no risk of any ammonia spikes, you know, because your filtration is down or less than what it usually is. So don't feed your fish during the power outage. Okay, so battery with an inverter, you can power more equipment than you would normally be able to. If you know, I've seen people use battery backups before. You know, the Ecotech pumps, you can get a battery backup for that. People have powered other things with it as well. Regular computer battery backups, that's not bad if it's a short term, but something like the bigger battery, you get a lot more time out of it than what those battery backups are able to do. And theoretically, if you're worried about long power outages, you can have multiple batteries to work with as well. You know, invest in one of those inexpensive battery tender juniors, and that way it stays topped off. You know, make sure it's topped off if you hear that maybe a storm is coming. You know, be prepared. That's the best thing you can do. Have all this stuff ahead of time. Don't go looking for it once the storm is already here and you've lost power. Obviously, a generator, if you have a large saltwater system, yes, it's expensive. You know, buy it in the off season, you know, invest in it when they're not, you know, double markup because storms are coming. You know, having that to be able to power not only your fish tank, but stuff in your house as well, it just seems like a no-brainer. You know, it doesn't even need to be really too big of one, but, you know, it's a worthwhile investment if you can afford it. And if, you know, again, if you're doing a saltwater tank, you should probably think about it. I have a few clients that luckily were able to find one after the fact, and they're keeping their tanks running and keeping themselves going as well. So anyway, that should cover the bases for you. You know, on the low end, if you're just a freshwater tank, those battery operated air pumps, running with the sponge filters even, that's a great way to go. Next step up, again, the marine deep cycle battery, power a few more things. If you're in a cooler climate, that'd be a great way to go, that you can run your heater as well. And then if you have a large system and or lots of tanks, invest in a generator. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. As always, if you're not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button and make sure to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you on the next one.